So I wanted to just give a little bit of a synopsis of this Romans chapter 1 problem. So many people deal with. There's the famous presuppositional classical apologetics debate with Romans chapter 1. And it says the invisible attributes of God are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. And then in the passage it also says they worshiped and served the creature more than the creator. Now, typical, from Karl Barth all the way to R.C. Sproul, we've got these people interpreting or inserting the idea of a physical, cosmological creation there. And that's not what it has to deal with at all. If you look at the language of Romans chapter 1, it is pulling from Israel's behavior. It's describing Israel. They worshiped and served the creature more than the creator. They changed the glory of the incorruptible God, made unto like a corruptible man and four-footed beasts and creeping things. They changed God's glory. You see that in Psalms. It's just super, super clear. But I want to make the connection to Genesis chapter 1. It says, you shall not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What is that? Well, I just want to contend that it's the law. Do not trust in the law. Jesus said, eat my flesh, drink my blood. That is, rely on me. Trust in me for sustenance. Do not trust in the law. Okay? They worshiped and served the creation more than the creator. And so when Paul says that, they worshiped and served the creation more than the creator, that's synonymous with do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What did Paul say? I had not known lust, except the law had said, thou shalt not covet. For by the law, he says, is the knowledge of sin. So rather than using the law as a schoolmaster to drive them to God, which Galatians says was the purpose of the law, to drive them to Christ, it was the schoolmaster, much like the taskmasters of Egypt when they were enslaved. That drove them to cry out. There was the hard labor. The Egyptians were forcing them with that hard labor. Well, that was the law. Hard labor was supposed to drive them to Christ, not drive them to trust in the law. And isn't it interesting how when they came out of Egypt, they were getting all mad at Moses. No, we had it better in Egypt. Let's go back to the law. That was the whole problem in the New Testament. All these Jewish Christians going back to the law. So we've got to get out of that way of thinking of physicalizing, carnalizing, I should say, Romans chapter 1. Okay? So when it says they worshiped and served the creature more than the creator, that is synonymous with trusting in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the first earth. It is the law. That is the first earth. And it creates a first heaven, which is a guilty conscience. Adam was ashamed after trusting in the law, okay? Trusting in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, then we have the tree of life, which is Christ. And when you trust in Christ, you have a new heaven, a new earth, Christ. That is the second Adam. And we trust in Christ and we have a new creation, a new conscience. If any man be in Christ, the tree of life, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. So we have this, I saw a first heaven and a first earth of Revelation 21. That was the first heaven and first earth of the old creation. The first heaven, conscience. The first earth, tree of the knowledge of good and evil, law. And he says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth had passed away. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have what? Passed away. All things have become new. Well, Revelation 21 says, behold, I make all things new. And that's, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven and first earth had passed away. And there was no more sea. That's the Gentiles. We read it. Isaiah chapter 60 is very clear. The sea represents the Gentiles. Well, in Christ, there is no more sea. So we are all one in Christ Jesus. Galatians 3, 28, 27 through 29. So it's very important that we make that connection and see that this is not a cosmological issue, but this is a covenantal kingdom issue as we approach Romans chapter 1. Compare it with Genesis chapter 2 and Revelation chapter 22, and of course, Romans 1 and 2 Corinthians 5. I hope you've enjoyed and learned and that you are stirred up in your thinking about God and his kingdom and the new covenant creation, which we all are in Christ Jesus.